Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast. My name is Marcia, and my friend Angela and I will be discussing some of the character behaviors and manipulation tactics that are associated with narcissism. You may or may not be familiar with the terms that will be discussed today, including the word narcissism. And that is okay because by the end of this podcast, the mission will be for you to walk away with a full understanding of each term, as well as identifying the behaviors that are associated with them. Have a bachelor's degree in applied behavioral analysis, and I am currently finishing my master's degree in industrial organizational psychology, all inspired by personal experiences with interpersonal relationships. I will now turn it over to my friend Angela, and she will tell you about herself. Angela?
Hello, everyone. My name is Angela Patterson, and I am a registered nurse. I'm also the author and the publisher of the book, Do You See What I See? Do You See What I See is a survival guide to identifying and escaping narcissistic relationships. I myself am also pursuing a master's degree in a nurse practitioner for mental health and psychology. I'm also a survivor of a narcissistic abusive relationship, and Marcia and I, uh, breaking down different terms of what you will encounter in these type of abusive relationships. And I will give it back to Marcia.
All right. So some of the terms that we will be discussing will be breadcrumbing and gaslighting. In addition to the terms, we will also be defining what each term means. That way you have an understanding of what is the behavior that is associated with that term so that you have an understanding and are able to identify this when you see it. So we'll get started. Breadcrumbing. Angela, what would you say the definition of breadcrumbing means?
Breadcrumbing is an emotional manipulation tactic. Narcissists use this to leave you feeling confused. They leave you feeling emotionally invested in a relationship where there is really no progression. And I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this before. Narcissists use breadcrumbing to maintain control over you
Mm.
by by giving you just enough attention to keep you around, and it keeps you constantly chasing validation.
Yeah, they keep you hooked to keep you interested in them.
Yes. Breadcrumbing, what it does is really it keeps you emotionally invested in the relationship. Um, and what I mean by being emotionally invested, it means to have a deep connection to someone. You invest a lot of emotional energy to the relationship, but the relationship never gets better and the emotional energy is never reciprocated.
Yeah. You
Um,
stay in a constant state of just feeding that person's need. I mean, that whatever the breadcrumb is that they're dropping, of it,
yes,
and breadcrumb from in my mind, breadcrumbing would be like, a person just feeding you just a little nibble to get you
yes,
fed where you in return want more. It's that behavior of
yes,
reinforcement, constant reinforcement, but it's in small doses to keep you wanting more.
yes. There's actually a psychoanalytical term that we use in my field of psych. It's called cathexis, cathexis. And cathexis is actually the process of investing mental or emotional energy in a person or an object. What we're doing here is basically breaking down the meaning of being emotionally invested because you can find yourself so emotionally invested in a relationship to where you'll actually lose yourself.
Mhm.
And the narcissist is not emotionally available, so they cannot reciprocate this same energy back to you, right?
Right.
Let's just say, let's see, when we talk about breadcrumbing, and I know you were saying, about, how they just give you just like a little bit, they'll give you a little bit here and give you a little bit there. Let's just say, for instance, what breadcrumbing looks like is a person that's constantly sending text messages, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're sending text messages back and forth, right? So y'all just having this conversation on the phone. And then all of a sudden, the text messages stop.
Mm-hmm.
And the text messages, they go silent for several days, even weeks.
Yeah.
And you're stuck asking like, what happened?
Yeah. Thus igniting the cathexis mentality, because
Mm-hmm.
from the time that last text message happens
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
until you eventually hear from that person, like you said, which could be hours, days,
Yeah. Mhm.
you are in a state of constantly thinking about that person all day, every day. That is cathexis.
Right. And you're asking yourself what happened. Like
Yeah.
you're so confused.
Why is this person not talking to me?
Right. That's right. Also, an example of breadcrumbing would be a conversation that never gets deep. It's just you just stay on the surface the whole time. You're trying to have a deep conversation, but that person that's trying to breadcrumb you is really not that invested in the relationship, so they don't feel a need to get so emotionally involved, right? A lot of time this type of stuff happened when people who are trying to do online dating.
Uh,
So let's just say you met somebody online, right? But they never initiate meeting you in person, right? They'll
oh,
always
yeah.
say, "Hey, let's hang out sometime," but they never do,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they keep you in this hopeful and hook type of thing, and you just constantly, they'll keep you talking to them, and what they do is, that's future faking, and that's another term, but we won't get into future faking, but that is another term that we will discuss. That narcissists use, but they keep you hopeful and they keep you hooked on the next thing, and like, okay, when are we going to move, from this to something else? But
Right.
they just all you doing is just being tagged along.
They just keep you in that momentum. It's almost like that term, they keep you in this honeymoon phase. It's
Yeah,
almost like, because they want to keep that feeling going. And they
exactly.
know that, the risk of meeting that person, or the
Uh-huh,
risk
uh-huh,
of going, aside from online dating, if it's someone
uh-huh.
that you're dating, if
Yep,
they go deeper, it's gonna change the trajectory of the entire of what they've built up, which is to
exactly.
string you along, which is to breadcrumb you as long as they can, because they, like you said, the narcissist cannot maintain,
No,
um, that relationship for very long, so they don't have a lot of time. So
exactly.
they have
That's
to get
exactly
very
right.
crafty at how they
Exactly.
maintain that momentum.
Right, right, right. And another way we can look at when a person has become emotionally invested, because sometimes you don't even realize when you have become so emotionally invested in a relationship. Because first of all, the relationship is going to be one sided. The
Right.
relationship will always be one sided when you're dealing with a narcissistic person, because they don't have the capacity. They don't have they don't have what you need. They don't have the thing. They can't even give you what you need on an emotional level. Why? Because they don't even connect on an emotional level.
Yeah.
They can't do that. So a lot of time it seems when you're in these conversations, like they can go along with the flow. They can
Right.
go on because they're chameleons. They can be whatever you want them to be. They can be whatever you want them to be until they get you where they want you.
Right.
Right.
Just not full time though. Just not full time.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. They keep you hopeful, right? They keep you hopeful and they keep you hooked. So, and just let's just say what emotionally invested in a relationship looks like. Let's just say you always want to talk to this person, right? You just want to hear their voice all the time. Let's just say you start spending less time with your family, you start spending less time with your friends, right? You start putting this person's needs before your own needs, right?
Right. Right.
This is all what being too emotionally invested in a relationship is, especially when it's not being reciprocated.
Right. You do more, you overcompensate for
Right.
what you're not getting.
Exactly.
And that is so it's one when you finally realize what has happened to you, you're gonna be mad about it because you're like, my
Exactly.
goodness, all the times
Yep.
reinforcement. I'm sorry, it's called negative
Negative
reinforcement.
reinforcement. That's right. That's exactly right.
And it's just a tactic, a manipulation tactic that is used to keep you in a momentum to get the response that a person needs. And it's just really interesting how crafty that is,
Hmm.
although it's negative.
Hmm. Right. And like you said, it's you're overcompensating. You're definitely overcompensating because you're not going to get that in return.
Right.
The whole thing is that everything seems so normal at the beginning because they know how to make everything seem normal at the beginning. You got to think about this. Not you're not the first person that they've met. You're not the first person that the narcissist have met. They have several sources of supply. So guess what? They are doing this to everybody, not
Right.
just you.
And each time they do it, they get more and more craftier at it because
Yes.
one of my narcissist relationships, when I met that person, I'm not exaggerating. He had the personality of a broomstick.
Mm.
Okay. Really didn't have a whole lot to say. I mean, I was really overcompensating in this relationship
Mm-hmm.
to get
Same.
anything, any little attention, even the sex, like
Mm-hmm.
it was the weirdest exchange to
Mm-hmm.
getting to that point because he
Mm-hmm.
did not have any personality at all. But
Mm-hmm.
before it was over with, over the years, I saw his personality evolve
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
ways that they can mirror behaviors. They just
That's
can't
what they do.
maintain them.
Exactly.
So I
Exactly.
actually saw his personality evolve over the years to be more like normal, to get what he wanted, to be more expressive and things like that. But again, he would always retreat back to that narcissistic, negative breadcrumbing behavior and the
Mm-hmm.
tendencies.
Yeah, because that's all he knows how to do. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to think about this. When a person is wearing a mask or a person is not being themselves, they're going to revert back to their true self at some
Hmm.
point. They can't
Yeah.
be somebody else for a long time,
Yeah.
right? Just think about if you try to be somebody else besides yourself. You would be exhausted.
Hmm.
You would be so exhausted because it's that mask that you continue have to maintain. That that personality that you got to maintain during this whole process. These type of people are always um they're always anxious. Believe
Hmm.
it or not, their anxiety is high because
Right. Yeah.
they can't let the mask slip, right? And they gotta always be one step ahead of you
Hmm.
so that they won't be exposed. So they always thinking and they're always strategizing how to maintain this false sense of self that they have.
Right. And you might be saying to yourself, like, well, what would be the premise behind all of this? What would be the reason why a person like that would want to do do so much work to try to maintain that front like that? And it could be anything. It could be it's something that you have that they want. It's
Right.
something like it could be money, it could be sex, it could be some type of tangible that you have
Uh-huh.
that
Uh-huh.
they need. And that is, to me, that is what the motivation is behind the narcissist. It's not love.
Uh-uh.
It's not the need to feel loved.
Uh-uh. Uh-uh.
It's exchange. It's an exchange of something
Right.
and
It's transactional.
transactional. That's correct.
Um and when you say that what they're trying to accomplish,
Hmm.
the most important thing to a narcissist is control
Yes.
and power. That is the main thing that they will always seek is control and power because that gives them more fuel that keeps them, for lack of a better word, alive.
Mhm.
Um, they gotta have supply, and what we mean by supply is you have to have something that's feeding their persona. You gotta have something that's feeding them. So one person, that's why they have to have several sources of supply, because one source of supply is never gonna be enough for a narcissist.
Right. Right.
They're never gonna find, like, say, for instance, if we are trying to normal people and be in a normal relationship, we're trying to understand each other at the beginning, right? We want to know each other. We want to know each other on a deeper level. We talk deeper on things. Because there's an exchange of information, and we're on the same page, but not when you're in a narcissistic relationship. It's not going to work like that. So they they're only looking for supply, meaning they're looking for something for their own greater good.
Mhm.
So they need, say, for instance, one woman or one man may give them constant praise, right?
Mhm.
And the reason why I say one woman or one man, because narcissists can be a man or a woman. um uh the other woman or man can give them money. The
Mhm.
other one is giving them, say,
Sex.
validation,
Yeah.
sex, right? They getting something from each supply, because one is never good enough.
And so they feel the need to, in order to get all the feels,
Yes.
um, that they require, they
Right.
their mind is conditioned to feel like I have to get it from multiple
Mm-hmm.
supplies.
Yeah.
That keeps it going too. They don't want
Mm-hmm.
to run out of supply. I was reading a part in your book here that talks about like the impact on victims.
Mm-hmm.
It says when someone is in a relationship with a narcissistic partner, the effects can deeply impact their emotional and psychological state. It is important to understand these impacts thoroughly. Narcissistic abuse can often be subtle and manipulative, making it difficult for victims to recognize what is happening. This can lead to prolonged exposure to harmful behaviors, further deepening the emotional and psychological wounds.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is
Mm-hmm.
what's happening under the surface. While you're running around being led, the narcissist is sending you off on a mission somewhere outside of what his real intention is. So you
Mm-hmm.
spend all your time sniffing out this clue, but that's the clue is not what the real intention is behind the narcissist.
Exactly. That's exactly right. In the book, it talks about the impact of your emotional and psychological state. And that's like one of the main things that Marcia and I really delve into, is the impact of your emotional and psychological state. Because a lot of times people are hearing narcissism, and they are hearing this term over and over again. It's being constantly drawn out so much, to where people really kind of taking it as a joke, because it's just being drawn out so much. But the people who really have experienced it, or is still experiencing this, are crying out for help, because they're constantly being broken down mentally every day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to where after a while you're broken down so much, to where you really don't even know who you are after a while.
Yeah.
Um, you have to gain your confidence back, gain your self-esteem back. You have to rebuild your whole life again. And people are throwing this around so much, because they don't understand the psychological and emotional impact that this has on a person.
Right.
Um,
When a person is the victim of a narcissistic person, it's almost like the person that's the victim is the one that is carrying the emotions for the relationship, right?
exactly.
And so they're looking at everything, all things relationship, all things we, all things us, all things, emotional, wanting that exchange, because you're sitting over there bubbling up with emotions that you're ready. I mean, the emotions are at the door. The starting gate. They're ready to be released.
Right.
And the narcissist is so not that person to be on the receiving end of it, but he wants what qualities you have that make him feel, you
Right.
know, the emotions. He wants the attention
Mm-hmm.
that you give
Mm-hmm.
him. He just can't, he or she just can't handle the emotions that you bring to the table with that as well. Um,
Exactly.
and that
Exactly.
is because of the control and that's why he feels the need to control it, because he can't reciprocate back to you the emotions that you're ready to give him. So he got to send you off on this wild goose chase.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He or she is not ready to give up the relationship. They want to try to see what all they can get out of it that they are wanting, because your wants and your needs are not theirs.
No, and your wants and your needs are not important to a narcissist. They could care
Exactly.
less about what you feel. They could care less about what you think, as long if it's not surrounding them, your thoughts, your feelings, your actions. They they really could care less.
And
And
that's why they're able to execute the breadcrumbing and the gaslighting so well. And it's so hurtful to the victim though, because they're like, how could you talk to me like that? Like you were nice one minute, but
that's
how
it.
this person could turn around and just say such evilness and do so many evil things? It's because their mindset is not like yours. They're not
Right.
thinking from a position of love.
They don't have the ability to do that. And and I know that these terms sound a little bit out there, because you're like, okay, I know some of you guys will be thinking about, where these terms come from. I promise you, these terms have valid meaning, and they always come from somewhere. Like the
Yeah.
word breadcrumbing, and breadcrumbing. That word, just to kind of enlighten you here, Marcia and I were talking about this. That word breadcrumbing came from the fairy tale Hansel and Gretel. And it referred to Hansel dropping pieces of bread along the forest path to mark his way back home. So he had to leave a trail of breadcrumbs so he wouldn't get lost. And
Right.
so that's where that term just kind of came out the blue. Because the terms come from somewhere. I promise you that they,
Right.
they always come from somewhere.
Just enough so that he could see the next way to go. I need to go here. Okay, I need to go there. So in the psychological and interpersonal term for breadcrumbing would be just enough to keep you going.
Exactly. And actually, to tell you the truth, breadcrumb really kind of correlates with the trauma bond.
Hmm.
It correlates with the same. And I think I don't know if we've talked about trauma bonding yet, but trauma bonding is another term that we'll be discussing. There's several terms that once we start breaking these terms down and explaining what they mean, you will be able to see that you have experienced these terms. They're not they foreign. They're not going to be just something that we just kind of made up. They're actual terms. And the thing is that it'll be the experiences that you have felt or the experiences that you are feeling now. These terms will validate what you're feeling, and you will have a name for it. Um,
Exactly. Exactly. I would like to think of it as, you know how in a story everyone has a character and each character plays a vital role in the movie.
right.
So the terms that we're going to be using throughout our podcast, just know this, even if you don't understand the word,
Mhm.
rest assured we will define it, and
Right.
we will give you several different angles to help you hone in on what it actually means. But just know that each word does play a role in understanding narcissistic abuse as a whole, because not every relationship is a narcissist abusive relationship. other relationships go through challenges and they have other traits that they
Yes,
possess that identify them as not being a narcissistic relationship. And
exactly.
we're aware of that. But just know this, for every term that you may or may not understand, we will definitely expound on it.
Exactly. And just like Marcia said, you'll start to hear this term more and more if you haven't already, but just know that there are different levels of narcissism. There are different types of narcissists. Not every person that has narcissistic traits is a narcissist, right?
Right.
It's just
Exactly.
like every psychopath is not a serial killer. Every psychopath is not even violent, believe it or not.
Right.
Um, so they may have psychopathic traits, but they're not psychopaths. So there's
Exactly.
always a breakdown of when we're talking about psychology here, and we're talking about mental health. There's always categories and patterns. And so the way narcissism is even diagnosed are through patterns of
Yes.
behavior.
Patterns
So
of behavior.
patterns of behavior, and that's what we want you guys to start to recognize patterns, because if you do something one time, I've always believed in this. Something happens once, it's a mistake.
Hmm.
If something happens twice, it's probably a coincidence. If something happens three times, that's a pattern.
That's a pattern.
Okay.
Pattern.
So when you talk about narcissism, we're talking about different patterns of behavior. And so what happens is we take that person has to have at least, say, 8 out of the 9 characteristics in order for us to deem that they are a narcissist.
Yeah.
So, but they have to have these so many traits. They got to have so many characteristics that we can come up with this. And
Yeah.
that's what every mental illness in the DSM. What we study out of is the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual for every mental illness, right?
Right. Right.
Um, and when we talk about the DSM-5, you'll hear us talk about the DSM-5 a lot, because most every psychology major is going to
Have
study out
used
of the
DSM.
DSM-5.
Right.
We have to study out of that, because that's where we understand categories of things. It's how we understand breakdown of what is actually a mental illness and what is a mental condition. A narcissist does not a narcissist This is not a mental illness. A narcissist has a mental condition. They have a personality disorder. And so people, they mentally ill. No, they are not mentally ill. You know what the difference is? The difference is that we can treat mental illness with medication. This condition we can't treat with medication. So
Yeah.
that's the difference, right?
Yeah. Because it's a part of their makeup.
Their
It's a part of
personality.
their personality.
It
So
is.
it's engraved. It's
It
like
is.
it's just like you have a personality, I have a personality. Of course, it can be, you know, personalities can be altered with, different drugs and like alcohol or drugs or over the counter or prescriptions, but the premise, the overall basis of the personality for a narcissist, it's engraved, it's in them.
Right. Because what happened is that you got to think about how long did it take you to form your personality?
Yes.
It took you a long time to form who you are, who you became as a person. And so that narcissist experienced something during the developmental stages of life,
Hmm.
right? And they experienced what we call arrested development. And we call it arrested development because either they went through some traumatic event or some form of trauma that they did not grow like we grow every day as people. We want to do better. We want to grow as
we
better people.
evolve we evolve
Exactly.
yeah.
They can't move past the trauma.
No, because it's a constant. They're playing a they're playing a segment in their mind. They're playing a scene from the trauma that keeps replaying over and over again. And as they develop in replaying that scene or that picture or however way the trauma went down, they're relating that in their everyday life. Like it's like they're constantly responding to it. That's why you don't know what's going on. That's why you don't understand what's going on with this person and they are resembling these traits. Most people go inward and they say, oh, well, what am I doing wrong? And that's what the narcissist wants you to believe. He wants you to believe that facade because deep down inside, it's a deep rooted issue that it's a trauma that they have experienced that they keep replaying over and over again in every facet of their life. And they
Yeah,
can't
and
get that image out of their head, and they're constantly responding to it with all the things that are happening in their life outside of it.
right. And that's the thing is that they want you to continue to go inside because they want you to take the blame for everything because they
Yes.
cannot take the blame for anything.
Right.
You know, they
Because of the
cannot.
trauma, though. The trauma made them feel all they have covered up that we expose ourselves to every day. But they've covered up those emotions. That's why they take on uh that abusive tone when you demonstrate those normal emotions, love and caring. That's why it makes them so angry is because they were traumatized. Their development for love and all that was stunted.
Exactly.
Trauma. So they can't deal with that. So when they see it coming from you, they immediately want to shut it down.
Exactly. Because they can't they don't understand it anyway. They
Right.
don't
It never got a
understand.
chance to develop. Arrested development. It never got a chance to develop.
Right. And so another thing we talked about breadcrumbing, which is a manipulative tactic. There's another manipulative tactic that we have not discussed, and that's the tactic of gaslighting. Gaslighting is another psychological manipulative tactic. Actually, it makes a person question their reality, makes them question their sanity, makes them question their thought, even their own behaviors.
Yes. Their own
Um,
existence.
exactly. It's still emotional abuse. Once again, gaslighting will make you have you feeling confused. It'll have you feeling anxious. It'll have you feeling isolated, right? And most of the time, if not all the time, this is when people go into a depressive state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Um,
says, your book here says, page 25 on gaslighting says, initially the manipulator may appear supportive and understanding, only to start questioning the victim's thoughts and perceptions subtly.
yes.
Over time, these denials and contradictions become more frequent and forceful, leading the victim to become
Hmm.
increasingly dependent on the gaslighter for their
Hmm.
version of reality. Woo! That's deep.
Yes, it is. It
So you
is.
don't even when the narcissist is in full effect with you, you don't even possess your own ability to understand your own reality. You need them to you
Right.
need to define it for you.
Right. They just have you questioning all the time, you know? And so like we talked about how all these little words have meanings and they come
Mhm.
from somewhere. Gaslight actually came about from the movie Gaslight.
Good
And
movie. Very good movie.
it was a British movie back in I think the
30s.
1930s or something like that, where the husband would manipulate or gaslight the wife. And so what he did was he would manipulate the gas lights in the house. So he would make the lights go from bright to dim, flicker on, you know. He would just like messing around with the lights and then
Messing
he
around
would
with her head.
yes, he was denying that this was happening and he was telling
Yeah.
his wife that she was imagining things,
Yes.
right? So and for the sake of making her look like a mental patient. so he could gain control over her inheritance. And believe it or not, this can be so devastating to a person.
Yes.
And for one person to have this much power over your emotional or even your mental well-being is very detrimental.
It is.
Um, and believe it or not, this can happen so subtle, so seamless. It can be happening over and over again. So if you ever hear your partner mention something like, I didn't say that,
Yeah.
or you imagining things, you're seeing things. Say for instance, you saw them talking or flirting with somebody at the gas station or something like that. And say you sitting in the car or whatever, and you see them, you know what flirting looks like. And then you mention it to them and they say, oh no, I wasn't talking to her. Oh, I think you're seeing things.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you're gonna start questioning yourself and start to telling yourself that you're overreacting. Maybe I'm just overreacting. Or maybe he wasn't doing this. Maybe. And every time you're gonna talk yourself out of it.
Yeah. It's the worst game of poker face, I tell you. It's and only a person whose personality is challenged would be able to keep up that facade, that personality that is that of the gaslighter. And I do want to make a correction. The movie Gaslight, the original, was filmed in 1944, but
Okay.
it's a
Yeah.
very good
Uh-huh.
depiction
Uh-huh.
of gaslighting
Right.
because even like you said, it's subtle. Um, and you don't know because you're responding to normal things. You're
Right.
responding to normal exchanges in the beginning.
Uh-huh.
Um, but then when you start to see just little slight discrepancies, like, wait a minute, I know I saw him cheating. I know what cheating looks like, or I know what
Right.
flirting looks like. I mean, are you
Right.
making me
Right.
question my ability to know when somebody is flirting?
Right. Right. Right.
And
Right.
he or she is looking at you like, "Yeah, because it didn't happen.
Exactly.
It's all in your mind."
And the thing is when you start to counteract gaslighting, this can throw the narcissist into a rage. So you have to, you're not trying to convince them, okay? You're not trying to convince them that you know what you're talking about because you're not going to do that. Because all you're going to do is cause an argument and a fight. So this is not the goal. Is not, you can calmly and you can firmly state, I know this happened. That's what you call setting boundaries. Because when you counteract them, you setting boundaries. And narcissists do not like
Yeah,
boundaries.
they don't like
Um,
boundaries. And you mentioned here in your book on page 32, strategies for countering gaslighting. It says when you find yourself in a situation where someone is trying to distort your reality,
yes,
it's crucial to have strategies in place to maintain your sense of truth because they're
right.
going to be trying to knock you off your square.
That's it. That's it.
You go on to say recognizing the problem is the first step, but what you do next,
Right.
uh, you mentioned here that keeping a journal or a
Yes.
log
Right.
where you write down what happens each day can be an invaluable resource. You give a lot of good examples
Uh-huh.
of strategies because you got it in writing, the day,
Oh,
the
yeah.
time.
Yep. And guess what? I had to do that, and I still have to do that.
Mm,
So I still have to journal because
yeah,
if you watch that movie, you will see how he would trying to make her doubt her own reality.
yeah,
So he would break into her house and he would move her stuff around in her house. He would move around the towels in the house. The towels could be uh on the rack in a certain order. He would move them around,
right.
just to mess with her mind, just to mess with her head. So what I would have to do a lot of times is I would just take a picture.
Yeah,
I would just take a picture before I leave my house. I would have to take pictures of how, because I know how I leave things. So I would just have to take pictures to see, mine would break into my house and move around my shoes in my closet because I would keep my shoes a certain way in the closet. And he would
And
just
now this
move.
character that you're talking about is because there's different types of narcissists. So, the person might be saying, well, man, I never had that happen to me, but there's different levels of it.
Different
And so what
levels. We're talking
Angela is
about, yeah,
explaining, the
yes,
malignant
the
narcissist.
malignant narcissist, right? The covert, the
Yeah.
malignant covert is what
They're not going
these
to
type
all
of.
operate like this, but she happened to have one that was really
Exactly.
on the worst spectrum.
Exactly. So I'd have to, and I still journal when my lights left on in my car because he makes sure that I know that he's around. So he'll leave my overhead light on to let me know he's been in my car. So I would have to journal and write that down. I would have to, just write down if I come in my house and my lights are out, knowing that I
Hmm.
leave a light on in my house. Um,
Right.
we talk about this because these are things that I know for myself I experienced and still experiencing. And because we'll get into the different types of narcissists, the type that will stalk you forever. There is no time frame.
From
Um
the most extreme, from the least extreme, the subtle,
mhm,
the ones that operate in a subtle fashion
mhm,
across time, to the moderate ones, to the most extreme. We'll be touching on all of that. And one of the last strategies that you give, which is very essential to understanding the difference between narcissistic abuse relationships
mhm,
and other types of toxic or
mhm.
challenging relationships, is educating yourself.
Definitely.
Educating yourself. That was one of you gave a very good
Yes.
strategy in here. There's the last strategy is education. And we know
Yes.
that in today's society
Mhm,
that
mhm.
knowledge is key.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Educating yourself about gaslighting, educating yourself about narcissism is the most powerful tool. That's how Marcia and myself came to this knowledge where we are now. That's why this is what helped us on the healing journey.
Yes.
We made sure that we educated ourselves so much to the degree that we wanted to educate you guys.
Yes.
So, and because we know what worked for us, so we
Yes.
know that it will work for you. And so it doesn't matter how other people, doesn't matter. You're going to want to talk to people about this. You're going to want to, don't worry, trust your own perceptions.
Yes.
Trust yourself. That you are, whatever you're thinking is valid. Whatever you are feeling is valid. We're telling you that. It's
Yep.
not, you're not crazy. I don't care what the narcissist says, because the more you expose them or call them out, the more crazier they're going to say you are.
Right.
That's just how they function. Building your self confidence is in setting boundaries is a key.
And having a spiritual
Yes,
foundation.
yes,
It wasn't until I accepted my spiritual foundation as a place of refuge. Like, I found myself when I was in my relationship with the narcissist. Um, I was just toggling around different areas so that I could just function. While I was in this relationship, I was reaching out to friends and family who didn't understand, wasn't getting any type of
same.
comfort there.
Yep,
I was
same.
I was trying to talk myself into and out
Yep.
of the
Mm-hmm.
situation. There
That's
was
right.
no comfort there.
Same.
And after years of being with this person and chasing my own tail with the worldly things, I
Yep.
really found that having a spiritual,
Mm-hmm.
um, that was my refuge, in
Mine
the
too.
end, because it
Mine too.
helped me. Um,
Mhm.
Bible verses like Romans chapter 16, verse 17, where it says,
Uh-huh.
now I teach you, brethren, mark them which cause divisions of offenses, contrary
Mhm.
to the doctrine which ye have learned, avoid them. The Bible says to avoid people like that
Right.
are
Exactly.
bringing constant
Yeah,
division
that's
in
exactly
your
right.
thoughts, in your actions. I mean, it doesn't relent,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
ongoing all the time. Just knowing that the Lord has given me permission to separate myself from a
Mm-hmm.
person that is constantly causing division, that gave me hope.
Right.
It gave me direction. It
Right.
gave me confirmation.
And
Because the narcissist is gonna keep you in that state where you don't have any rights to make any decisions about your life without them.
no, they're gonna pull you and isolate you, even people that are closer to you, because they don't want you to have that support.
Right.
They don't want you to have that. They want you to solely depend on them. And like Marcia was saying, I'm saying for me, I had to really, really strongly turn to my faith, and there's a scripture in the Bible that says Ephesians 4, it says I could do all things through Christ who strengthened me.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
when you are in this situation, you don't feel like you have strength to move. You don't have strength to get out of this thing. You don't have the strength to do anything. It's like they have total control of you.
Yes.
But I continue to let that one particular scripture resonate in my spirit.
Mhm.
And I said, you know what? First of all, what I'm dealing with is not of God.
That is right.
This is of the devil.
Mhm.
Because if you continue to educate yourself on narcissism, you're going to find that this is a demonic thing.
Yes.
It's demonic. These are demons walking the earth, basically.
That is right.
Serving no purpose, serving no good thing, at all. So,
And but that they exist. But what kind of got me, like you were talking about,
cathexis,
cathexis, where we're constantly being made to think about the narcissist. I
hmm
found that having that spiritual base gave me focus in another direction that the narcissist couldn't touch.
right,
They
right,
couldn't touch it because it was Ephesians for you, but it was the book of Psalms for me. Whenever something would come up where the narcissist was just trying to cause that division, I would I would just open up Psalms and just pick a
yeah,
chapter.
right,
And
right,
it really gave me a pathway that was comforting. It gave me the peace that I needed in order to figure out my next steps.
hmm
And the next steps, and this is why Angela and I are here, and we will be here. We will be providing you more content. We will be breaking down every aspect of relationships, positive and challenging,
right,
because not all relationships have these challenges.
right,
We're not on some type of rant about narcissism or anything like that.
hmm
We're bringing to you our experiences by way of our own personal experiences,
right,
and
right,
we're willing to share whatever it is that you need to know. Any questions that you have, we will in the future develop a method of, answering questions, any questions that you may have, as well as other things to look forward to in the future. So, we're glad to be here, and we're glad to be able to bring you the message.
yes, yes. And this is a time when you're going to continue to grow, and you're
Mhm.
going to continue to heal. And just understand that healing is a process.
Yes, it
It
is.
just takes time. As you continue to educate yourself about narcissism, you're going to feel yourself growing stronger, and you're going to feel yourself taking your life back,
Mhm.
reclaiming your life back,
Yes.
reclaiming your strength, able to set those boundaries, and stand firm in them. But like I said, doing all of this, if you are still in a relationship like this, just do everything with strategy, because these you have to understand that these people don't have any type of empathy. So they do not feel anything. They don't feel for you. I don't care how much you beg and plead and cry, because they're not going to feel what you feel. And that is the hard truth. The hard truth is acceptance. You got to accept these people can't feel what you feel. That's
Yeah, and
just
you have
it.
to accept the fact that what I if I knew then what I know now,
Right.
is accepting the fact that I'm not responsible for a person's level of love or attention or attraction that they bring to the table for me. That's their
Right.
responsibility. So
Exactly.
it's not my responsibility to carry the love that I have and then make sure that I'm getting the love and what I need from them. That's not my responsibility. That I have to realize that um person has to want to love me the way
Right.
I want to be loved.
Exactly.
Anything that represents anything less than that, you really need to start looking at how much time you want to put into that.
Exactly.
Because the narcissist is going to send you off on a mission that if you don't cut it off in the beginning, it's going to take you on a ride that, like some of us have made it, have survived it, and some of us are still in it, and some of us
Mhm.
are getting ready to go through it. So that self-awareness is really a good thing to walk out on faith and know that your self-awareness and how you perceive things is because that's you. You
Mhm.
you are driving yourself. No one else is driving for you. So when you
Right.
pull over and let someone else start driving
Right.
you, then you end up in places that you regret later.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And don't if you've been in it for a long time and you're trying to see a way out, you got to understand that you got to have an exit strategy. You got to have a strategy
Yeah.
to exit. You can't just leave because they're not going to let you just leave. You got to have strategy. These people can be very dangerous, especially when you attempt to leave because that's abandonment to them. If you are dealing with a narcissist that experienced abandonment as their trauma, guess
Oh,
what you're
yeah.
going to do when you abandon them? You're going to reignite that thing
They're
in
wrong.
them.
Yeah, you're gonna reignite
Exactly.
it.
And it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be safe because you're going to cause a narcissistic injury. And
Well, and the other thing to that is too, like you've always said, Angie, when you link up with a narcissist, you're not a person to them. You're not a human being.
no,
You're a possession.
nope.
So if they looking at you as if you're a possession and you all of a sudden
Hmm.
disappear, you're
Yep.
gonna heighten that person's
Right.
um
Yeah.
uh that ability to go and get that possession.
So
That's
that
my
yeah,
possession. Where are you going? You
exactly.
belong
Because
here.
to them, you're property.
Yeah.
You are only a piece of property to them. They own you, basically. You are their little prized possession. And for you to just leave, even though they treat you like crap, you to them, no, you can't just leave. Oh, because I own you. And that is rejection that leads to obsession and a lot of times does lead to stalking and then that does lead to them basically a lot of times they are taking your life because they can't control that rage. They can't control that narcissistic rage and they will go to that extreme. Don't ever underestimate a narcissist. Don't ever underestimate them because if you in your when you first get in your mind and you start saying, "Oh, they're not going to do anything. They're not going to do that." Don't ever say that because they
Mm.
will. They have no emotions, so they're not going to feel. They're not going to feel what you feel. So why wouldn't they?
Yeah, and the thing about that is you had to relocate and I had to relocate,
Yeah.
and that's because of the level of narcissists that we were experiencing. We
Right.
had to leave in order to have some type of sense of normal life where we, had peace.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So we have a lot to discuss. We have a lot of information to share with you. We're excited about this journey that we're on together, Angie and I. And we look forward to sharing all of these experiences and also bringing you to understanding the terms that you may or may not hear every day that are related to relationship challenges and also narcissistic abuse. So for now, we're gonna say goodbye, but we will be back with more content. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll see you guys next time.
See you guys next time.